This video is brought to you by a lamp. I've had this lamp for like 8 years. It's been very trustworthy, forever lighting the wall. That's its whole purpose, but it's all about focus. You too can be like this lamp. Let your light shine, guys. I don't know what that was. I know you're thinking that, but don't ask me. Today's video is a bit of a part 2. I did a video like this, I feel like almost 2 years ago with a similar title, with a similar topic, and it is in this realm of videos that I'm doing where I'm focusing on one ingredient and really kind of dissecting it a bit and giving you guys some recommendations and different levels of accessibility that focus on that one ingredient. And I think you guys have been enjoying this over the past few years. I've enjoyed making it. I don't see a lot of content quite like this on YouTube. I know not everyone is into deep dives, but some of you guys are into deep dives, and some of you guys don't know that you're into deep dives yet. But welcome to your deep dive for the day. Today's video is all about oud. And again, we did an oud video already, so I don't typically circle back to ingredients I've already done before, but oud it's a rich ingredient. It is a rich topic. I have been continually surprised by how many oud-based fragrances I have in my collection, because I wouldn't necessarily consider myself an oud fan or someone who seeks the most oudiest of oud fragrances out there. That's just never been me, but I have grown more of an appreciation for it, and maybe even more of a tolerance in some forms, because sometimes it is a little bit tough. It's a little challenging, and we'll talk about that today. So if you want more of the nitty-gritty details in terms of how oud is harvested, what exactly it is, and how it's used in fragrances, then I'm actually going to save you some time in this video. Check out my previous video up here when you get a chance, and the intro to there will give you everything you need to know about where oud comes from, and hopefully give you some more appreciation about it, because it's a pretty wild ingredient. But one thing I shared in that video that I will share again in this video has to do with the title. Kind of. It's the cost. The cost of oud. You would not believe how expensive this stuff can be. Some of the highest quality oud oil on average can cost up to $5,000 per pound. What do you buy on a regular basis by the pound that costs $5,000?
Exactly.
However, some of the wildest, rarest, and most premium oud oil can range up to $150,000 per pound. That's mind-blowing. So as you could surmise, because oud can be so expensive, especially in its raw natural form, a lot of perfume brands don't really seek to use it, at least not in its real form, because it's so expensive to get, and therefore it would cause them to have to charge a lot for their fragrances, which I know a lot of you guys aren't looking to spend a ton of money on a high quality fragrance. And therefore some synthetic variants of oud are used all the time, and they usually get the job done, and they cost way less than the real thing. So that is all in the benefit of everyone. Now, as I kind of said earlier, I'm not an oud connoisseur, but one thing that I have noticed about real and high quality oud oil when it's used in a composition is that it often does give the scent a strong presence and makes it more long lasting. That's what I know a lot of people presume about real oud oil, but in its highest quality forms, it's not necessarily overwhelming. There's something kind of delicate about it while being undeniable. It's a weird duality. It's a weird kind of contradiction, but that's at least what I noticed. I always go into real oudy oud fragrances that use high quality stuff with a little bit of an extended arm waiting to be slapped in the face, but they seldom do. They have this nuance to them. They have more of a softer hand, again, while being very present and really defining the composition. My plan is to have different levels of accessibility. I call them starter, intrigued, and enthusiast. And I'm going to do something a little different in this video. I'm going to actually share the categories in reverse order. So we'll start with the high quality, super enthusiast oud forward stuff first, and then we will move our way to the more accessible stuff towards the end. So I don't know, just wanted to change it up. Hope you guys enjoy that. Everything will be linked in the description. So how about we dive right into it? Let's start with the enthusiast tier. This is the oudiest of the oud. And this first one here was actually sent to me by a brand known as Maksim Perfumes. They're based out of Thailand, I believe. They are associated with the Bortnikov brand. I do believe that the owner and maybe perfumer of Maksim is directly related to Dmitry Bortnikov. I have been getting to know Maksim's perfumes over the last year or so. They sent me one of their latest, they actually sent me a couple of their latest ones. One of them is definitely an enthusiast oud. This is called Oud Marin. This is the real deal, guys, but it's an aquatic oud, if you can imagine. Not necessarily all out oceany, fishy aquatic. No, it's more of like this deep, rich, salty-ish, gloomy wateriness that is very much behind the oud. And the oud here, it's pure. You can tell. This is pure stuff, and it has a little bit of a funk that oud can have. It has that touch of animalic tinge here, but it's actually well blended with a lot of resins. There is a little bit of seaweed, but I wouldn't say that really defines the scent as much as the oud. It is a great blend. It's actually a little bit more bottom heavy, a little bit more oud heavy than it is marine heavy. They do use natural ouds for I think almost all their fragrances. High quality stuff. Again, this is top tier stuff. This is expensive stuff. This is not for everybody, so you got to be ready to drop some bread on some high quality in small quantity, but you get a lot for what you pay for, and a little goes a long way. I put this on my skin the other day for the first time. I'll be honest with you, my first sniff, I couldn't bring it up to the nose right away. It was a lot. It was coming off the skin. It was filling the air around me. It was definitely oud forward. So those of you guys who are a little bit squeamish about a little bit of funk in your oud, you may want to just skip this one. But if you consider yourself an oud connoisseur, or you're very interested in the real deal, I think that first spray will definitely intrigue you for sure. But as it dried on my skin, the edge to this oud definitely tames a bit. It becomes a little sweeter. There's a hint of like a cacao in there. There's very, very mild, dry, chocolatey feel. Some vanilla, some other woods outside of oud. It's a beautiful composition. It smells like nothing else I have in my collection, but it is not for the beginner. This is edgy stuff. Again, the real deal. We have another fragrance of theirs we'll talk about that is in our intrigue tier, maybe a little bit more accessible, but we'll get there. Anyway, that is Oud Marin. I'd love to know what you think if you've tried it, or just based on what I've talked about, how it sounds to you. Up next is from the house of Nishane. I haven't gotten a ton of wear out of this fragrance. I've tried it in the past, and then I never came back to it. A subscriber actually reached out and was generous enough to say, hey, I have a bottle I want to send you. And I said, I don't know, are you sure? And he said, yes. And I'm like, okay, this is Afrika Olifant. You don't hear a whole lot of talk about this one. This one is a little animalic for sure. It does feature some, I think, civet or castoreum, maybe both. There is an animalic touch with definitely some oud. This slightly barnyardy, pretty present oud in the background. But in the little experience I have with this fragrance, it dries beautifully. There's a lot of resinous feel like labdanum and myrrh. Adds a slightly sticky, warm, resinous feel. There's some musk as it dries down. There's some leather. It might sound kind of heavy and in your face, but it dries in this very sensitive way that smells so elegant. It's still a little bit edgy. It's still going to be outside the lines of what you're used to if you don't really smell much oud. So again, this is for the enthusiast here, but I think it's a gorgeous scent profile, a very, again, elegant and sophisticated one to wear for a night out when you want to kind of dress to the nines, really make a statement when it's not too hot. This is definitely cool weather stuff. And again, still getting to know it, so I'll be circling back to it as the weather cools down. It's still relatively new to me, but it had to be in this video because its oud presence is definitely for enthusiasts. The animalic presence that surrounds it, definitely for enthusiasts, but it is a must know fragrance if you're someone who's looking for something different and special. That is Afrika Olifant from Nishane. Let me know what you think. This final fragrance in our enthusiast category is from Amouage. When I first got my nose on this, wasn't a fan. They sent it over to me. I did a live stream on it, did my first impressions. Wasn't a fan. It was too funky for me. So I didn't even really give it a chance after that. I've come back around to it a couple times since then. It's been a couple years since they sent it over, and I'm seeing the beauty in it. There's a lot of people who sing its praises, and I was really confused by that. And I'm like, what are people seeing in this that I'm not seeing? So I revisited it and realized if I don't stick my nose all the way up in it, it's actually quite beautiful. This is called King Blue. For whatever reason, it smells less funky to me than it did when I first tried it. Maybe because I've tried more and more animalic stuff since I've smelled this one. Compared to the Maksim, I would say this is fairly tame. But that first spray, especially up close, it's going to slap you. It's going to grab your nose. It's going to have a little bit of funk. So you have been warned, but it is surrounded by this beautiful incense, this smoky, dry, somewhat fresh, maybe even some citrus in there that brings a bit of a transparency to it. It's so well done, and it makes it utterly unique. This is one of those special ones that Amouage put out that not everyone will appreciate because it's got a strong face. It has strong ideas, some words that might rub you the wrong way. And not everyone's about that. But if you have ears to hear, or better yet, a nose to smell, and you consider yourself an enthusiast or budding enthusiast, then man, you got to check out King Blue. I can't say it's my favorite Amouage yet. I'm not wearing it every day now or anything like that. I'm just slowly coming back around to it. So More to come as my journey unfolds with this one, but if you have experience with it, let me and everyone else know what you think of King Blue. How about we move to our intrigue tier? This is the middle tier. This is for those who are just ready to move on to more interesting things. Simple as that. Our first one up here is from Argos. They call this Cherons Veil. I still don't know how to say it. Every time I say it one way, someone corrects me about it being the other way. It's gone both ways, so I don't know what the right way is. Whatever. It's a great scent though, and I will say that inherently it's not the most unique scent. It does smell quite a bit like Oud Ispahan from Dior. It is in that vein, but from what I remember about that fragrance, this is way more tame than that, way less animalic, way less oud heavy and funky than that fragrance can be. So if you were a little squeamish about that one, you might actually like this one. It is very elegant. It's a beautiful oud rose scent with some warm spices, some jammy rose. It's a little sweet. I did feature this in a video of horror stories of fragrances that I just wore all the way wrong and had a terrible experience with. This was one of those stories. You can go back on my channel and check out that video. It was hilarious. And I just misused this fragrance. I sprayed a little bit too much, and the oud was really the star of the show and was not singing, but screaming. And the people around me were not having it. So be careful, be mindful when you wear a fragrance like this. If you want this opulent, somewhat juicy, warm, spicy, but still kind of delicate, but still kind of funky oud rose fragrance that wears with such high quality, it smells very luxurious. It smells as expensive as it is because you do pay a pretty penny for this. And if you want to save money on that pretty penny, the code FRESH10 will help you do that. Then I would check this out. I would love to know what you think if you've tried it. At the very least, just look at this bottle on your screen. I know you saw the B-roll. It is stunning. I love the frosted glass look that Argos is going with these days. Anyway, let me and everyone else know what you think of this fragrance that I'm not going to say the name of again from Argos. I was back and forth on whether or not this fragrance would be in the beginner tier or in the middle tier, and I decided to put it here because while it's not super hard to understand and super hard on the nose, it's a little intense. It has quite an intensity to it that the beginner may not really feel comfortable wearing. So this is for someone who really wants to make a statement, is not afraid of a loud scent personality, but one that is done with the highest quality. This is called Oud Aquilaria from Oman Luxury. This was perfumed by Dominique Ropion, who also perfumed another fragrance for Frederic Malle. I'm forgetting the name of it, maybe Promise or something. It'll be here on screen. And this is eerily similar to that. So I have a feeling maybe Oman Luxury approached him, as a lot of brands do these days, and said, hey, can you kind of remake or just make that fragrance you made for them for us? And he's like,
If you got the money, sure.
and thus we have the fragrance, and it's beautiful. It is apple based, apple forward, juicy, crisp, kind of fresh, but not really, with an oud that is, again, not really funky, not challenging. There's no real sharp edges here. It's just very rich. It's very powerful, and it's loud, and it wears very elegantly. This is something you would wear, again, night out. You're dressed well. You want to make a statement. Maybe other people will also be wearing loud fragrances. And most importantly, that the fragrance has room to breathe. No tiny little 7-foot ceiling rooms. No, you need a big space to let this fragrance move about. Make sure there's AC. Don't choke people out. And better yet, if you're outside on a nice evening, this is great too. That's Oud Aquilaria. I want to know what you think if you've tried it. We've got another fragrance here from Maksim. This was the second one they sent me, and this one is, again, a little bit less intense, a little bit less oud funk than the previous one. They call this one Bestia Sacra, and this one is definitely easier to get next to than I was expecting. Based on what it sounded like, I figured this was going to be just as strong of an oud, if not just like oud and a ton of incense, just smells like a funky church. Thankfully, it's not. There's beautiful nuance here. There's a great sensitivity here, kind of in the way I was talking about with real oud. When it's done well, when it's high quality, it doesn't slap you in the face. It kind of dances in and out. It kind of spreads out, and it just doesn't really take over everything, unless you're just smelling straight up pure Assam oud or something. That's going to be intense. But this is oud shrouded by a bunch of resins and incense. Tons of frankincense, lots of myrrh. Definitely will remind some people of church for sure, but way less than I was expecting. There is an animalic heart, you have civet, you have castoreum, but on my skin I found that they didn't really scream all that much. They added just the right amount of interest to the scent. They just kind of danced in and out of the sweetness, of the smokiness, of the woodiness, of the resinous quality to give it some, again, some depth, some dimension, and it dries down with some nice beautiful resins like benzoin and labdanum, maybe some sandalwood down there. Lovely composition, again, easier to understand than Oud Marin, but I would definitely save this for the cooler months. I would save this once again for the evening. When you want something that maybe is not quite so statement making like Oud Aquilaria or some of the other louder ones we talked about, because this is not a loud fragrance, but it is a present one. It is undeniable, but again, while being sensitive. And I think that's Oud at its best. It doesn't have to be a scary big bad wolf strangling your neck and strangling the necks of others because you decided to put on a couple too many sprays of it. You don't need to be afraid of fragrances like this when they're done well. That is Bestia Sacra from Maksim. And let's move on to our final category, starter. You are like, okay, I've heard of this oud thing. It feels kind of interesting, but it also feels overwhelming. I have a feeling I won't like it, so I'm afraid. Where should I start? I got a couple of options, a couple of recommendations you can consider. The first one up here is from Goldfield and Banks. It is a flanker. I haven't spent a ton of time with the original one, but I do have this one, which I enjoy. Silky Woods Elixir. Believe it or not, yes, it is kind of an oud-centric fragrance, but there's a whole host of ingredients here playing a role. You have everything from fig to resins to musks to orris root. There's just so much going on, and it just kind of comes together as this somewhat dusty, dry, sweet, warm, ambery, woody fragrance. The oud is, I'd say, barely above a whisper here. It is not super noticeable as, oh, that's totally oud, at least not to the average nose, but it's definitely oud that creates its woody presence. It really is in the background, adding the foundation to the scent. And it just wears in such a beautiful kind of airy way. It just kind of dances around. It doesn't really come off as dense. It doesn't really take over the space, but it also just moves behind you and leaves a trail, and it lasts a good little while on the skin. People are going to smell this around you and be like, man, whatever that is just really pleasant. It's really nice, smells of high quality, and it's not challenging at all while being fairly unique-ish. It is kind of its own special DNA, again, based on the original. That's Silky Woods Elixir. I want to know what you think if you have any experience with this line. It's hard to say if this fragrance would exist if it weren't for Oud Wood from Tom Ford, which I do prefer to this because it's just the OG. Thankfully, this one does kind of do its own thing based on that DNA. This is from Thameen. It's called Carved Oud. Yes, it does smell a little bit similar to Oud Wood, but I can easily say if there's some of you guys who for whatever reason don't love the scent of Oud Wood, maybe you find it a little too medicinal, you might like this. This kind of does away with that. It's a little bit more round, less medicinal on the woodiness, and it's actually a little bit more present. A lot of people complain about that as well with Oud Wood, is that it lasts barely 5 hours. I think that's just the right amount of time you need it for the kind of occasions you might wear it, especially to a nice evening event or something like that. But this one will last. If you want something that does last with that DNA and is maybe a little bit easier to get next to, then this is a great one to consider. I see why people love this. It's one of the most hyped fragrances from the brand for a reason. So nothing new here. You've probably tried it. You probably smelled it, at least heard about it. I think it's worth checking out if you're looking for a beginner oud that does smell of high quality, that does smell pleasant to most people who will smell it on you, and you're going to get some good wear out of it, especially in the fall and winter and even springtime when you want something that just fills those semi-formal to formal occasions. That is Thameen Carved Oud. And our final fragrance, some people would say this fragrance put oud on the map as far as the Western perfume market. We're talking about from YSL. Some of you guys know what this is. This is M7, and I do believe this is technically what became known as M7 Oud Absolu, and now they just call it M7. I couldn't tell you the true differences between M7 and M7 Oud Absolu. Maybe they're the same. I don't know the whole lineage behind that, but this is generally what's available these days. I don't know if it's still being produced, but it's still out there on the discounters for not crazy prices. I'll link to what I can find down below. When you smell this, kind of like the other two fragrances we talked about, not the most oud forward, not super explicitly oud as the most obvious central ingredient of the fragrance, but it's undeniably in here, along with some patchouli, along with a little bit of mandarin orange to add some sparkling brightness, and definitely some resins like myrrh and labdanum to kind of ground it, to kind of glue things together, give it a little bit more of a warm ambery sweetness behind that oud and that earthy patchouli. But it's oud. It's oud in a designer form. I know this was the work of Tom Ford's creative direction, and he gets a lot of accolades for that, rightfully so. And who's to say that oud may not even really have a footing in the Western market if it weren't for this fragrance? But I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch. Now you see it kind of all over the place. Again, not in the most natural forms, because this fragrance would not have been sold for as little as it was sold for if it was using the real deal oud. No, this is more the synthetic stuff, but it can be great. It can be really well done. It can still be smooth. It can just add a little bit of that oud vibe in there if you need it. And it does it super well here. Very accessible, very light, very handsome, very understated. Definitely something to wear day or night, almost year round. Not my top pick for the hottest summer days, but yeah, you could pull it off on a summer evening. If you're going to be outside, there's going to be a breeze. It smells beautiful for that. It has just enough transparency to it to work for that. So yeah, let me know what you think of YSL M7 if you've tried it. I want to know what you think of all these fragrances if you've tried them. And as you go down to the links below in the description, I want you to think about YSL M7 in front of this light, in front of this lamp. The focus that it takes to light that wall behind this bottle. I want you to take that focus into your endeavors, into whatever you do. Be that light and shine on everyone you meet, or at least on a wall.